how would you coach them through those first 2 years?
Yeah.
What would you say about it?
It's funny. That's, man, that question makes me smile.
It does, doesn't it?
It really does, man. I'm just like, it takes,
Hang on. Why does it make you smile?
Well, it makes me smile
first.
because, I wouldn't say any of my friends could do this.
A rising tide raises all ships.
We're trying to find, activate, and retain more customers.
You work from 9 to 5 to make a living.
And from 8 to 2 to make a life.
When we look at the heart of the network,
the data shows us key performance indicators about our business.
And this is the InXpress Show.
Good day, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the InXpress Show. Today, I'm super excited because we have an amazing guest with InXpress for over 10 years, just crossed the 10-year mark with us, Mr. Derek Henderson of Seattle, Washington. Derek is super unique because he has a history with our main carrier partner, DHL Express. He worked for DHL for 3 years, and you can tell just by the tone of his voice what InXpress has done for his life. It's really unshackled him from the corporate chains of DHL and other businesses. So again, I can feel that he has no regrets. He loves his life, and the business played a big role in that model and what it's been able to do for him and his family. Through this episode, he shares specific sales situations, and I specifically love his answer on how he would double his business in 6 months if he absolutely had to. So without further ado, enjoy this episode from Mr. Derek Henderson. Derek Henderson, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Blake. Great to be here.
Of course, man. So you are in Seattle, correct?
Yes, been in Seattle for 20 years. 20
years, and where are you from?
Originally from Southern California, but my family migrated up the West Coast to Oregon and then ultimately to the greater Seattle area. Okay,
very good. So you just passed, I saw, 10 years with InXpress. Congrats, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a good run.
Yeah, 10 years and a month. And before that, strange enough, you were 3 years with DHL.
That's right.
Okay. So tell me about first of all, how you got into DHL and how you liked that in your 3 years. And then obviously it was probably a pretty easy, so to speak, relatively easy transition into InXpress. How'd you get into both of those and find them?
Yeah, the answer to the question lies actually what came before DHL, which was where I had my first actual corporate sales gig, which was with Cintas, the uniform people. And, I was with them for a couple of years, 2 years exactly. And it was strictly new business, no account management. There's no relationship with your clients at all. And I really found out that I did not like that. And so I decided to go ahead and throw in the towel with that. And I wanted something that I could actually build relationships. And somebody mentioned to me that I should go get a job with FedEx. And so I started looking into the whole opportunity, with who was hiring and whatnot. DHL happened to be hiring. And so I started applying with them. And I was lucky enough to land that job. And so really it was my desire to actually manage accounts, and be customer facing that drove me to be with DHL. I was with DHL for maybe 3.5 years actually. And then DHL, as you probably know, reorganized heavily in late 2008, early 2009 when they dropped out of the domestic market. And they found that they had a bunch of redundant workers, which they decided to let go of. So I was one of those.
Okay.
And so, in the aftermath of that, I actually was trying to get into firefighting. I became an EMT. I started volunteering in my local fire department and started testing, started getting on lists and really making a go of it. And then about 1 year, almost exactly from the time that DHL laid me off, a colleague of mine who I sold with at DHL had come back to me. He reached out to me from across the water. He had actually landed in Singapore with this company called InXpress, who was, expanding into Asia at the time. And so he had gone through training, talked to, some of the corporate office, specifically Ken Brockbank, came back highly motivated, wanted his own franchise. But of course, he's in Singapore and he didn't have anybody to run it. So him and his father and I partnered together. I ran the InXpress Seattle franchise. We opened for business 10 years ago.
Amazing. Okay. So a lot of things there. We're going to come back to the Cintas only new business sales because that's something that I'm actually thinking about right now with our organization here. But tell me about working with the DHL. Obviously, it was different because when you were there, they were doing domestic. Did you mostly focus on selling domestic?
Yes, the truth is I did, but because it was more prevalent, right? I had actually heard about a couple of reps that focused on international only or primarily international, and they were some of the most successful reps because international was so profitable, and the way that they did their comp plan, those people ended up making a lot of money. And so it intrigued me to say the least, and I started to really learn it. But because of the fact that, I was hired at DHL right after the Airborne Express acquisition. And so essentially what DHL was trying to accomplish was they had just purchased Airborne's ground network so that they could compete head to head with UPS and FedEx. And what they needed when they hired me was reps to go out and push ground. So that was very highly incentivized for us to go after domestic in those first few years. And so, I did a lot of focusing on domestic.
Wow. So in your opinion, why do you think that in the shipping world, I shouldn't say we, but nobody can compete with FedEx and UPS domestically here in the United States? It seems like the regional carriers, sometimes they get up a bunch of steam and there's threats and scares about them collaborating and making one carrier network to be a third competitor. And
Sure.
DHL tried in whatever year that they started and obviously, failed or reorganized in 2008. Why can't anyone do it?
Yeah, well, and I don't know that anyone can't do it, but I know the DHL couldn't do it. And so, but you know what? In my professional opinion, DHL, which was a German company, even though they didn't start that way, they had become very much a German company. And when they merged with Airborne Express, they kept a lot of the middle management, and Airborne ran a very different operation than DHL did. And so there ended up being a lot of what I would say like a cultural dissonance in terms of the professional environment. And so you had people from Germany and, from DHL corporately who wanted to run things very differently than the Airborne Express operators. And so I think that was ultimately the key to their demise in the domestic market.
So a mergers and acquisition issue rather than strategy issue.
Absolutely. Even when in 2008, DHL had lost over $1 billion. In fact, the Deutsche Post WorldNet had to cut a check for $1 billion to keep DHL USA in business. And what people don't know is that UPS at the time was posting losses of almost 300 million quarterly. Yep. So UPS was not, the shipping world was not, it was not in a good spot at that point in time for anybody. It's just that DHL was so deep in the red from the Airborne acquisition that they didn't have enough track to stay in the game.
And do you think we're seeing that right now with FedEx and TNT with their merger? Stock price declining, lowering prices? I mean, it seems like they're
very possible.
Yeah.
It's very possible. TNT, I believe, I'm not specifically positive. Are they an Australian company?
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's very possible. Truth is, it's difficult, especially internationally when you have two organizations, especially if there's a difference in culture there from a management style.
Right. Okay. Good stuff. So with DHL, you're selling, and then you get brought back around to selling DHL in a much different environment, right? It's a franchise platform, InXpress. At the time that you came in, how many franchises were there in the United States?
So there were, I want to say there were about 20, maybe 30.
20.
But a lot of 20 or 30 franchises in the U.S. But a lot of them were, they were on their way out. They weren't strong. They weren't thriving.
Right.
They were. It was a hard time.
Very good. Founded in Australia. Just looked it up. TNT Express. You got it.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to hear that there's some cultural dissonance going on there.
Right. But where I was going with the question with franchising, right? Talk about the difference in selling a DHL service, and we have other services too, freight and domestic freight, international, import, export, heavy stuff. But talk about the difference between selling DHL in a franchise network versus a more corporate atmosphere.
Oh my gosh, Blake, it is so much better. It is so much easier. I have so much, and I'll tell you exactly why. One of my biggest issues at DHL when I wanted to do something for the customer, even if it was to get a credit of $50 on their invoice, it took an act of God. It was unbelievable. And the truth is, when I got to InXpress and I started to run my business, what I could do for the customer, how flexible I could be, was just night and day. I felt so, it's funny to say this, but I felt so powerful.
Yep.
I felt like, I can actually do something for the customer, and it's my decision, right? So yeah, it was certainly a huge step in just the flexibility and ability to actually, provide a great service to the customer.
Yeah, it's so opposite than you would think. Like, look what you just said. You felt more powerful as a one-man shop than some of the largest companies, courier services in the world, just because of their restrictions and
bureaucratic red tape.
Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah, processes for this. And really it was, who do you try to, and this might this might speak to some of the difficulties with DHL and their domestic demise, but I could never find out who makes the decision. I just want to know who makes the call,
Yep. That's funny. And they always point you to someone else.
Yeah, it was layered in nebulous esotericness. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think we need to push on that more with our value proposition to customers. And I mean, I totally get what you're saying, because somebody has an incorrect bill or a dispute and they're a good customer and it's a $4 difference. It's like, it happens.
Yeah.
You throw it on there and you say, thanks for being a good customer. And that's how it goes. But I just had the opportunity to be at the call center for DHL last Monday. Lynette, who works for you, was there as well. And that was something that I noticed right away. We sat with the telesales reps to learn and get value from them, see how their operation was and how they structured it. And he was pricing a customer. And he said, if I go past X amount of discount, then it goes over to this guy. And he points at somebody across the room and they have to get approval. Wow. And if it's 4% more discount on top of that, then he sends it over to this guy and he points over to an office of a sales supervisor that's probably sitting there. And then if the pricing's approved, then it goes to a credit check and they make sure that, that the customer pays or don't have any outstanding bills with anyone else. And they do a full-on check on these customers. And I'm like, okay, so how long does that process last? He's like, really lucky, 7 days.
Oh my gosh.
And then they request the account, and then the account gets set up. So I was like, wow. Just like you said, it's almost empowering as a one-man shop versus a big company. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And, to that point, I actually had a real-life example to that. Through a very interesting and kind of drawn out set of circumstances, one of my long-term clients for 5 years ended up having a direct account with one of our carriers. I'm not even going to say the name. And turns out that, I had just as much claim to the customer as the carrier did. And so when I went to the carrier and spoke with the people who manage the InXpress account, they said, Derek, I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's a dog-eat-dog world right now, and it's going to be a mudslinging fight. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, what I was hearing. And so I went back to the client, and for the last 5 years, it should be said that my price was half what the carrier's was.
Oh man!
The customer directly. So the customer had been paying double with the carrier directly.
That's what they wanted
it. Right? Oh, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Now, of course, once the carrier found out about this, they offered to start beating the InXpress rates. Okay. So it then became a competitive situation. And then in my dealings with the client, I said, listen, I'm a business owner and I can only do win-win. And I want you to know that if it makes sense, I really want your business. I think there's value for you in this. I can be competitive, but I have to be win-win. And so, and the customer just appreciated that. And the customer said, listen, I'm going to give you their rates. I want you to match them if you can because our owner is price driven. But for me, the win is in having you available to answer questions because that is so powerful to me.
Exactly.
And of course, the customer decided, on their own to close their carrier direct account and go with InXpress, which is awesome.
Yep.
So,
that's good. What a story, man. And that happens quite a bit, obviously not a whole lot, but it does happen. And the customer, there's customers. I really appreciate when customers see that side of it because they see the value of having an InXpress contact, and they might have had a bad experience with another carrier with all the red tape, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So going from corporate to your own structure, you wake up the first day and you're selling DHL. It's an international service. How'd you structure your day? How flexible is your schedule? Where you work from? Tell me about how you set up your operation there.
Are you talking about now, or are you talking about in the beginning?
Yeah, now with your franchise.
Right. So I'm in a place now where I'm fortunate enough to have, as you mentioned, a sales rep. And so that's been outstanding just in my ability to help grow the business and leverage, an additional person selling for you, which honestly makes a huge difference. When more than one person is trying to sell business and grow the company, it makes a huge difference. So that person, my sales rep, works remotely from their home and does mostly telesales. In fact, 100% telesales.
Very nice.
So, and then what I'm focusing on is I'm doing high-level account management. So I'm taking care of probably our top 10 to 15 clients. I am, trying to develop those relationships further. I'm trying to essentially add value to those relationships because those relationships are the ones that I'm going to see the most organic growth from. And so that's going to add to my bottom line. And then my wife, Meg, also works with me in the business. And I will say that, having her in the business is a game changer. I am not a highly systematized or organized person. She is both. And so having someone who can harness my energy, my people personness, and then she can systematize it and say, this is how we need to bring on a customer. This is the process that we should go through. And then set up the various stages in our CRM, for example, all that kind of stuff. She's very process driven. So she's really helpful to the business that way. Yeah, it's been fantastic. So I'm selling for probably 2 to 3 hours a day in the business myself, trying to bring on new accounts. My sales rep is full time. And my wife Meg is doing invoicing. She's customer service lead. I actually have a customer service person that works for me with another firm, Booth and Partners, if you've ever heard of them. And so there's about 4 of us in the business right now with all told.
Awesome. So you and Meg complement each other pretty well in running the systemization, and Derek's the energy.
Yeah, that's right. But the truth is, I built the business for 5 years before Meg ever actually came on with us. So,
yeah, right. That's right. Okay. And you guys have 2 girls, is that right?
We do. Yeah, they're 14 and 15 now, if you can believe that. So my hands are full. That's for sure.
Nice. Yeah, that's fun though. And if they were asked what mom and dad do, would they be able to explain?
They would. It would be I'd love to hear the answer to that question, in fact. But no, they know, they know InXpress. They know shipping. They know to spit in the direction of the FedEx truck when it drives.
Very nice. Yep.
So they know that I work with DHL a lot. They're learning more and more as we go along. This is a great story. I actually had my 14-year-old said, Dad, can I make some calls for you? This is about, 3-4 weeks ago.
Wow.
Can I make some calls for you, Dad? And I was like, what do you mean? and she's like, she said, I want to answer. Well, she says, what I really want is to like answer the phone and say, hi, this is InXpress, or InXpress, this is Kate. Can I help you? Right. That's what she really wanted.
Amazing.
To do. But it was awesome. But what I ended up doing, I wasn't able to give her dream call there. But what I was able to do was put my other AirPod in her ear. And then I made a couple of lead generation calls, a couple of sales calls. And I let her listen to it. And she thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And it was so cool to see her face and some of her insights into the call, specifically with the client and what they were trying to communicate, was really cool to see the perspective of a 14-year-old. So
that is cool. Awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, she's smart, man. I remember we met her at the convention a couple years ago. She came up to Taylor and she was like, "You're so beautiful."
That's awesome. She's a big complimenter. She'll find something to compliment you on, just to break the ice and start the talk. It's great.
That sounds like a saleswoman right there, man.
I think you're right.
Yep, that's awesome. Be careful with that. So talk about you already kind of went over your org chart in the franchise. You've got you and maybe Meg as the owners. You're doing more of the sales. Yes. Meg's doing some of the operations, maybe office back work.
Exactly.
And then sales rep generating business. And then you said you are utilizing Booth and Partners or some sort of lead generation, something like that, or no?
Not for lead generation, but for customer service. Yes.
Okay. So talk about that. How do you use them?
My generic franchise email, info150 at InXpress, that's going to go to my Booth and Partners agent sitting in the Philippines. And so anything that when customers are emailing in for quotes, that kind of thing, I've done my best to try and point them in the direction of my customer service email. So what that looks like is then, and I'm not even unless Eileen, who's my agent, unless she copies me, I'm not even seeing those emails. Right. So my customer service agent, Eileen, through Booth and Partners, is so fantastic. She's completely customer facing. She's highly intelligent, extremely thorough, which obviously is very important when it comes to, quoting business. She will also reach out to all of our partners, whether that's our freight forwarding partners, AES or Freight Right, or even DHL directly. She even reaches out to the help desk on behalf of the customer if something needs to happen. I just have had a great experience with them.
Okay, very good. And so sales process. Tell me about that. Do you do all the lead generation all the way through account management, or is there any handoffs?
So for the most part, right now, we are siloed. I'd say we're siloed. So Lynette, my sales rep, I purchased a list for her back in the day. She's working off of that. So she's generating her own leads off of that list, if you will. I mean, it's semi-qualified already, but obviously needs some work. And so she's working that list. And I am working other lists and other avenues. I'm also doing, actively asking for referrals from our existing clients. So from a process standpoint, it's kind of every man for themselves right now. But I have, I really want to get somebody in the lead generation seat, to take off some of the pressure from, myself and Lynette having to generate all of our own leads. So I think there's a lot of value in that. I remember thinking that at DHL when I was there. I was like, I'm not a lead generation person, but they didn't have anybody to do that for me. And there was nobody else to do it except for me. And I just remember thinking, man, this sucks. I really don't like doing this. I'm not the kind of person who thrives in doing this, but tell me who to call and tell me who I'm supposed to talk to, and I can do that all day long. So yeah, I would really like to get back to having a lead generation person in there, doing the hunting, the qualifying, and then letting the sales rep come in for the close.
Nice. Yeah, lead generation and lead qualification are two completely different things, right? And one's a lot easier than the other
absolutely.
One. That's what I was so intrigued about the DHL process when we went there last week to sit with them and see what their process is for inbound leads coming in and how they really what process they go through to get an account.
Yeah, I read your summary. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, there's a number of different people that they're talking to, and they're confirmed, 2 or 3 different times, their volume and what they're shipping. Do you pay for the shipping? And then, all of those questions are answered and a whole profile's built before it even goes to a sales representative.
Wow, what a machine.
So, oh yeah. And I mean, those people that are getting those sales, those leads, I guess, hot leads is what you'd call them, is just basically, okay, when's your next package? Boom, you're ready to go. I mean, in theory, right?
Those leads could be half as good as they are, and I'd call them a hot lead still.
Seriously, yeah. Hey, Derek, I'm calling InXpress. I need an account. That's
about
basically
the right
what
of it. Yeah.
Nice. So, okay. So as a franchise owner, this is one of my favorite questions, right? We have to allocate resources. We have to deal with shortages. We have, funding issues a lot of times because we're small businesses. If you had to double the size of your business in 6 months and say a family member's health depended on it, tell me what kind of process, what would go through your mind? How would you set that up to give that a run?
Right. Well, when I look at my own business, I mean, I would say in terms of total sales revenue, over a year, we're looking at almost $1 million. And so doubling that in 6 months is quite an endeavor, right? I don't think I could work hard enough on my own to do that. But if there was no option and like you said, a family member's health depended on it, one of my immediate family, I would have to immediately go out, get funding, some kind of a business loan. I think that I would hire 2 to 3 full-time sales reps. I would hire a full-time lead generator to feed those sales reps. And then I would drop every piece of non-core, non-selling thing that I was doing, and I would be in the field face-to-face full-time.
Powerful. I'm taking notes here, man. So I think the coolest thing you said, and the thing that people don't realize is pulling them back as much as it is the non-selling activities.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So go into that a little bit more. What exactly do you mean?
Well, it's interesting. Really, there's so much that goes into that. I even do, I do a fair amount of volunteering for my local church, and so, if we're talking double your business in 6 months, I'm going to have to pull back from everything. So not just InXpress non-selling activities, but like other things that are taking priority over my maybe sacred selling time. I have certain meetings that I go to that, kind of in the morning on a weeknight on a weekday. I would pull back from everything. Specifically with InXpress, I think that probably the biggest piece for me is the client facing, and specifically during sacred selling time, the client facing communications that I do. And, I'll take customers out to lunch, that kind of thing. I would probably pull back from that and try and find other ways to retain and build relationship with the customers, that weren't pulling away from my time. Because, at the end of the day, when you come down to it as salespeople, there's only one thing that we can never get back, and that is time. So anything that's pulling time has to be evaluated.
Yep. It's an absolute crazy question, but it really answers a lot of questions in your business by thinking about it, right?
Absolutely.
You start to look at the inefficiencies and, okay, what am I not doing? And if that's all the way at one side of the scale, maybe I could move closer to that, right? Maybe there's things that I am doing that I shouldn't be, or if I needed to put on a lot of customers, then I could pull something back for a couple weeks or 4 weeks or a month or something, and kind of move those levers a little bit more affordable.
I think you even have to, yeah, absolutely. I think you even have to look at your whole process, because if you sat me down right now and said, Derek, sell something, I would probably look online, or I when I'm looking at a list, I'm going to do a tiny bit of research first, maybe look at their website, kind of find out what's going on. What I would probably do would be get like a phone burner type of service, and I would overhaul my entire process. It would be so much more activity driven. We're not just talking hours in the day selling, we're talking actual activity, because there's a difference between being busy and being effective.
Exactly. So efficient that product is. I just started using it a couple months ago, and it's crazy how much of an effect it has.
Well, I haven't used it yet, but I've been really curious about it and wanted to talk to somebody who did it. Well, what's your experience been?
Yeah, it's super. So there's a little bit of setup, and you have to know who you're talking to and have a good idea about, if it's relevant.
Okay.
But just like any calling, obviously.
Sure.
But it's crazy efficient. When you talk to the person, have a good conversation, and all of the activity is on your screen of your computer. There's no more touching your phone. Once you're dialed in, it's all on the screen. You just click opportunity or interested or wants quotes or not at this time or hung up on me, whatever the case is. And then as soon as you click that, you can take notes, and then it's dialing the next person. Like it's already ringing the next number on the list.
Okay.
So I actually use it for, check-in calls. I've put all of my people in from XMS into Phone Burner this last month, not this last month, at the beginning of Q4. And because I like to check in with everybody, make sure they have their logins, account numbers. I know this is a busy shipping season for you guys. Is there anything that I can help you with? Technology work and everything, pickups, supplies. Yeah. And it's just an awesome service to use that process with, right? It's just effective. It's very effective. It's the best use of your time. And as soon as you're done, it tells you saved an estimated hour and a half. You just did 75 calls in 60 minutes.
My gosh.
It's just, it's nuts. I would highly recommend it. So yeah, it's crazy. The answer actually to this next question would be Phone Burner for me. So I've got, this is one I haven't asked before on any episodes, but if you were to look down your P&L, right, or your expenses, what's one business expense that's so worth it to you that you'd pay triple for that item?
Good question.
Stumped him.
Yeah. The answer to that question is interesting for me, because the one thing in my business that I would pay triple for, I actually don't have to pay for.
Okay.
which is it's a bit of luck. It's a bit of I knew the right people, whatever. But it's to say it's a lead source essentially that I don't have to pay for, but I get warm leads from a person. And I say they're warm. They're really just ultra qualified, meaning I know for a fact that they do international shipping, and I know that they're not, for the most part, I know that there's a better than average chance they don't have a direct account with the carrier, which is obviously a money lead source. If you
Absolutely.
know. But at the end of the day, it comes to me occasionally, and I don't have to pay for it. It's more of a contact that I've developed. But I tell you what, if it costs me $5,000 a quarter, I would pay triple for it.
Hope that person isn't listening.
Exactly.
That's good. That's funny, man. I like it. Yeah, I was just going to say, if it doesn't cost you anything now, it'll probably cost you a steak dinner or something going forward.
Exactly.
That's good.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears, man. You have been a franchisee for 10 years. I believe it was about 2 or 3 years ago that you started getting involved with franchise development and talking to potential franchisees that have approached us wanting a franchise. Is that right?
It is. The truth is that about 2.5 years, like you said, 2.5 years ago, I started getting involved in franchise development. I sold a couple of franchises. It was, it's a great time. The truth is that, and this is funny, to our earlier conversation, but I actually found my franchise declining more than I thought it would. And that is because, there is an element of time that is required to do franchise development. And so, I found my franchise just because I wasn't, putting the energy in. And so I found that I was in this decline. And so I'd done it for about 9, maybe even not even 9 months, maybe like 6 or 7 months. And then my partners at the time, and I've since bought them out, but my partners at the time said, Derek, the franchise is in decline. We need you to pull back from non-essential, curriculum essentially, and focus on the franchise. And of course, I have a fiduciary responsibility to do that because I had partners. And so I made that call. I decided to step off the franchise development team, and I decided to focus on my franchise full time. Of course, with some, I love the quote from Tony Robbins comes to my mind, and he said, "Where focus is, energy flows." And I found that to be the case big time. So I started focusing on my franchise, and then I started seeing this influx of energy and revenue coming back to my business. So ultimately, what I did was I did that for the last couple of years, focused on my franchise, and then I found myself in a good spot again, and I had righted the ship, so to speak, and now had the opportunity to step back into the franchise development team. So now I've been doing that since the beginning of the summer, essentially.
Good for you, man. That's big of you to step away and say, hey, the business is declining. Maybe customers are going elsewhere. They're for whatever case, and then bringing that back and righting the ship, like you say.
Well, thanks for recognizing that, because I didn't want to do that.
Right. Yeah, there's people that do that on the BDC as well, the Brand Development Council, and I think Manav Gupta did the same thing. And
I recall. Absolutely.
Look at him this year. It pays off for sure, investing really the time. So tell me about what it's like. I mean, what are these calls like with people and explaining the business and telling them about what you do?
Well, there's a whole, to put it briefly, there's a whole 8-step process, and that 8-step process usually takes about 90 days. So, but everything kicks off with what we call the step 1 call. And at the end of the day, the step 1 call is more about us as InXpress, that is, trying to find out really
who's a window shopper.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to find out about the process, or the candidate, or what we call candidate. And we want to find out 5 things. Number 1, what's their why? Like, why are we on the phone today? Why do you want to buy a business, any business, not just InXpress? What is it that's driving you? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? That's the first thing, because the why, as you know, is the most powerful reason to, that's the thing that's going to drive you to success.
Absolutely.
And so understanding that is critical to being able to, help a person to, go through the very emotional process of deciding, is this risk worth, what I'm about to do? Is it worth the day job that I have? Is it worth potentially failing? Is it, is having what I want worth this risk? So understanding that helps us to keep that candidate potentially on track. So it's, there's a little bit of a counseling kind of component that comes along to it when someone's really questioning, whether or not this is a good opportunity, or whether or not they're prepared to risk so much.
Yeah.
And then,
let me ask you a question on that. What is their average, or how do people respond to that?
Yeah.
That's probably not what they're expecting, right?
It's not, and it's funny because I think that's actually part of I think they do that on purpose. They have us say that, why are we on the phone today? And so, but what we typically hear, is, I would say the vast majority of people, they want, anything from stability, right? They want to be the master of their own destiny. Maybe they've been laid off by other companies, or, been the victim of an acquisition or a merger, and then, found their job redundant. Or maybe, they just, this is the one I hear the most. Derek, I've spent the last 20, 30, 40 years building something for someone else in corporate America, and I want to start building something for myself. That's what I hear the most.
Yep.
And so, and I applaud those people. And I know what it's like to, as we all do, to take that first step of risk and to really decide, do I want this bad enough?
Yep. Graham Fee, he's the first one that comes to my mind. He was an onboarding coach, or I was an onboarding coach of his. He just started recently, and that's exactly what he said when we started talking.
Man.
Was he was building something for someone else, worked internationally, was in the military for a little bit, and yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So what is that like so you've been doing it for 2 or 3 years. What is it like when you bring someone in and you see them, two-part question, you see them succeed or you see them fail?
Right. So remember, I haven't quite been, I'm going to correct you a tiny bit. I haven't been doing it for 2 or 3 years. I did it for 6 months 2 years ago. And then now I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 months again, 2 years later.
I see. So there's nobody that's at that 2-year mark that you've brought in.
So in my first 6-month stint on the Fran Dev team, I did sell 2 franchises. And to be honest, man, I would say that both of those franchises have not succeeded.
Okay.
And so, when I look at that, I remember looking at that thinking, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? Did I tell them something wrong? Did I misrepresent the opportunity? And I felt, there was a time when I was really questioning myself and just wondering, like, is that my fault somehow? But then I just realized, I was like, it comes back to a conversation I once had with Kyle Catalfamo. We were just on the phone and we were talking and we were just getting each other excited and fired up. And I remember Kyle saying, we were actually going through, there was a dark time in the franchisor's history when we all found out about what we call the derived income. And and at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. Every franchise has derived income. We just, it just came out in a weird way. And so, but we were talking about, a lot of people were complaining, a lot of people were whining about it. And Kyle and I were talking to each other and just kind of pumping each other up. And we were like, you know what? It doesn't matter if there's derived income or whatever there is. There's money to be made here. There's opportunity that's on the table, and it's there if you want to take it. And I went back to that conversation. I was like, you know what? Those people had exactly the opportunity that everybody else did. And I'm not going to feel bad that they decided for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe they just didn't want it as bad as they thought they did. But I'm not going to question myself and beat myself up over somebody else deciding that they didn't want to take advantage of the opportunity.
So well said, man. So well said. Yeah, and the funny part is the rates are the rates, and you saw the rates when you came on,
Yeah.
And you still have them. Nothing's changed about that. So it just goes to show and that's probably one of the best things indirectly. I know that the franchisor wouldn't say this, but it's one of the best things probably that's happened to them, because it's made them realize that the people that stayed, or the people that stayed through it, are the people that can deal with adversity, right?
Absolutely.
Or that are bought in and that are all in, or that, I don't know, just can deal with adversity is the best way that I can say it, because there's some that just can't get past it.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And I think that, when, even if you don't agree on everything, and some people, who deal with that adversity, they may not agree necessarily with, some of the decisions that their franchisor makes or whatever. But at the end of the day, they still see the opportunity, and they can still treat it as a win-win partnership and both people can still achieve their goals. I love it.
Yep, exactly. So on that similar vein, I have a question on franchise development vein.
Yeah.
If you had somebody close to you, say a very close friend, that came and said, I want to get involved with InXpress, I want a franchise, I want to do this myself, how would you coach them through those first 2 years?
Yeah.
What would you say about it?
It's funny. That's, man, that question makes me smile.
It does, doesn't it?
It really does, man. I'm just like, it takes,
Hang on. Why does it make you smile?
Well, it makes me smile
first.
Because, I wouldn't say any of my friends could do this.
Oh, man. I love it.
Yeah. So it's like, so just thinking about my friends trying to do that, somebody asked me, I was having a conversation with a prospective, candidate who was looking into the InXpress opportunity for a franchise development call last week, in fact. And he said, Derek, he said, be honest with me. If I decide to do this, will I be successful? And I was like, wow, that's a powerful question. And of course, the truth is I can't tell him that, right? Because whether he's successful or not is completely dependent upon him. And
oh my gosh.
And I said that to him. I said, listen to me right now. I said, the reason you're going to be successful or not is staring at you in the mirror. So don't tell anybody, don't try and blame anybody. If you come on board here, there's no one to blame and there's no one to take credit for the success except for you. I said, if you can look in the mirror and say, I believe in you, and if you can not quit when it gets hard, you can be successful. But I'm not going to tell you you will be successful because only you can tell you that. It was powerful.
That's good. It's what people need to hear, man.
Yeah.
It's what people need to hear.
I hear so often, especially when I first came into the system. Oh my gosh, man. I came into the system like January 1st, 2010, and we had convention like 3 weeks later. Right. And so came right into convention and I came into the all franchisee meeting and these people were so whiny. I mean, oh my gosh, there was so much like the franchisor is not doing enough of this and there's not enough of this. I was like, this is unbelievable. But, at that point in time, and now, of course, many of those people are gone now, but it was crazy. Really, it goes back to, you have to have an onus of control. You have to be able to say, I own my responsibility and my destiny.
Yep. No entitlement.
Yeah.
You have to, earn it. It's just, I think when the noun of franchising seems to come with I just buy a business and then it runs and then I make money.
Yeah.
Like that, I think that's what people, I mean, even in college when I was learning about franchising, it's like, oh, so a franchise is a McDonald's,
That's the funny thing. You know what? When people buy a franchise, what they want what they want is the benefits of like a McDonald's, right? Or a Subway or something like that, where there's a location that people are going to come to you. They want that. Right. That's what they want. But what they don't realize is that costs money, overhead, employees, location, building, all these types of, things that it can, just a Subway alone can be 250 to 500,000 depending on, location and build out. And so, people see the InXpress opportunity at the low cost that we have as in comparison. But what they don't realize is you don't get the walk-in customer, man. You got to go find them.
Inbound.
Yeah.
You're right. You're totally right. Derek, who's the most successful business person in your opinion, and how would they run an InXpress franchise if they had the same resources as you?
The truth is that I think that some of the most successful business people, I'm looking at guys like, former franchisees like Chris Lopez. I just love that guy. And
so genuine
and such a great guy, former Marine, comes in, buys his franchise, 5 years later, sells it for $1 million. I'm like, dude, that guy was awesome. He was so intense. He approached his franchise like with just an intensity. And I just love that about him. And I kind of wish I had that. And I don't think I quite have the intensity that he has, but I just loved watching him build his business, and I'd like to model a lot of things after him.
Yeah, yep. I'll never forget the presentation that he did at our convention that was on the cruise.
I remember that. I was there.
Yes, and he absolutely blew my socks off. The retention presentation that he had of all the numbers, and you could just tell that he was military. Oh, yeah. Like so into the details and what he found out and what he did and everything. And it's no question how he built the business that he did.
Yeah, my gosh. I remember when he said, blew my mind as well. I remember when he said, be generous when you're giving, I don't know what he called it, like a kickback or something like that. No. He called it a rebate. He said, when you give your customer a rebate, be generous. And I took that to heart, and I actually did that with one of my top clients, and it's one of the reasons I was able to hold on to them for so many years. But yeah, that was phenomenal.
Very nice. Well, that answers the how would they run an InXpress franchise. You're the first person to actually answer an InXpress franchisee. Outstanding. Cool, man. Well, we only got a few minutes left here. Let's see. So you've worked in a corporate atmosphere. You've had that. A lot of people thrive on the community feel, the feel of an office, going in and seeing people.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we, feel like we're on an island, right? Yeah. And because of that, there's a lack of motivation. We're only in touch with other franchisees as much as we make an effort to be.
Right.
There's business depression. There's loss of vision. How do you deal with some of that, and how do you overcome those?
No, I think that's such a great question, especially like you said, in this business when, most of us are one-man offices, And so, what I decided probably about 3 years into the business, I think the most important piece of that is actually knowing yourself. Knowing, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Where do you get energy from? If you get energy from being alone or working by yourself, then oftentimes you can, manufacture your own motivation and survive the island. The island fever is what I call it. But if you're not getting energy from being alone, then you need to manufacture that energy by building a team around yourself. And that can look lots of different ways. It doesn't mean you have to, create hire a full-time sales rep, although that's a huge piece of it. If you can do that, I highly recommend it. But I started my team, and that was my answer to that question. How am I going to survive and compensate for working on an island? I needed to build a team around me. I started with a customer service person who was, kind of part-time. And in fact, it was Nancy Wright. I'm sure you know who that is. Mm-hmm. She works, does customer service. Yeah, absolutely. She has her own little business where she provides customer service for, several franchisees. And she was providing for me as well. She was my team in the very beginning. So, when I was, out there alone, I would call her sometimes just to say hi. How you doing? And give myself that energy that I needed to go out there and do the cold calls, to do the drill. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to hire a lead generator. And that lead generator actually turned into a full-time sales rep for me. So then I had customer service and a full-time salesperson. And once I had a full-time salesperson, well, then I started having weekly sales meetings, right? Then when my wife came on board, she actually came on board as a salesperson in the first. So, our weekly sales meeting went from 2 people to 3 people. And so that was, it was expressed as a percentage, it was massive increase, right? And
right.
So, but it was huge. And that's all it is. It's about managing the flow of energy. You need to know where you get energy, and you got to be able to make decisions, and allocate resources to be able to create and manufacture that energy.
Love it. I think that's the biggest thing. That is, like, when you hear cliche advice, you never hear awareness. Right? Like nobody ever says be aware. And that's what, awareness is a very big theme in your answer there. Like, you are aware that you got your energy from other people, and you needed to build a team around you, or you were aware that maybe a sales rep wasn't working and you need to make a change, or when you're down you need to get around people, or go out, like when you're getting the door slammed in your face, go out and see customers that are your own, take them out to lunch. That's what you mentioned earlier. So totally, it's people do not think that enough, I don't think, or they don't focus on really being honest with themselves and being aware about, how am I feeling and why. Okay, man. So we're almost out of time. I want to leave the floor open for you to say anything, any parting advice or words or anything at all, man. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say thanks for having me, dude. And I got to say, when I came into this business, I remember being in training. I remember Ken Brockbank having us, do this exercise on the very last day of training, in fact. And the exercise was something along these lines, write down what you want your income to be. what do you want your income to be? And I remember writing it down, and I'll share it with you. It's actually $250,000 a year. That's what it was when I was at training. The truth is that before I got into training, I had no clue what I was getting into. I did not realize the power of this model or of business ownership in general. And so I wrote that down, and I remember just like crying my eyes out. And I was like, at first I didn't know why I was crying. And then I realized it was the dawn of realization on me, like, oh my gosh, this is actually possible. And realizing what that would mean to me and to my family. And I just got to say that, InXpress has been, I've done a good job here. I've had some success. I'm not going to say that it was all given to me, but at the same time, this has been a great model for me. And anybody who has grit, who can stick it out in the hard times, who can, persevere in the face of adversity can be successful here. And it's just a great opportunity. When you think about what a residual business model can do for you, that you can work from home and really, like, it takes, for me, family is huge. And I want the ability to not just provide for my family, but to be present in my family. And this has been a business model that's allowed me to do that, even from the very beginning until now. I didn't have to actually, give up, go through the first 5 years of hell just to get to, a little bit of paradise. No, the entire way has been paradise for me. So it's been awesome. Love InXpress. Love the opportunity. Love that I got to do this with you as well, man. So thanks so much.
Love it, man. Yes, so well said. I also had a blast. It's so fun talking to you always. High energy. That's why you're a Top Gun winner, man, is because you enjoy the process, right? And you're aware of yourself along the way. And that's why I think you have fun and you enjoy it even on the rainy days, because it's raining a lot in Seattle.
It is, man. It is. Although in the summertime, dude, it's the most beautiful place in the nation, and everyone wants to be here.
Very good. Very good. Well, Derek, thank you so much for your time, man. Really enjoyed it. We'll see you very soon.
Thanks so much, Blake. Take care.
Hey guys, it's Blake. Just one more thing here. If you have any interest in InXpress or learning about what we do, head over to InXpress.com. There's a boatload of knowledge on shipping, B2B services, e-commerce growth, growing sales online. If you need a shipping quote or you want to be a sales rep and crush it with us, or the website just sounds cool, InXpress.com. That's INXpress.com. Take care.